Welcome back to the Berg Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. With me today is Dan
Hey, everybody.
and Ford.
Hey, how's it going?
And one thing we've been talking about here in the office a little bit recently is how we at times get ideas and influence from how other companies do things. And I know we've talked about it before here on the podcast, right? Peer groups, the idea that we a couple times a year try and get together with other organizations, sometimes in the same industry, sometimes in similar industries, sometimes just in construction in general, to kind of bounce ideas off of them, get their feedback, hear and see the way they do things, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it works even amongst a team when two different foremen get together and they can kind of talk back and forth. I was just in Virginia, another contractor, and we did site visits. We got to go out and see their crews. We got to go out and see how they do things. So this group that I'm part of, Virginia, Ohio, Washington State, all over the place. And they all do things a little differently. And so it's a great perspective to see how they're doing things. Then we get together and have conversations. Sometimes the conversations are more valuable than what you see, just because, you could just start talking about something. The one guy, he was a big proponent of one type of equipment. And so I sat down beside him at one of the meals, and his dealer basically fell apart. And so he sold all of his equipment and changed brands just because of, and that's interesting because up until this point, every time I've talked to this guy, like, he just bled this one brand, but really he's like service and parts. That's all that matters. He said, because like I had a machine, it was down for 6 months. They couldn't fix it. I sold 8 machines and bought 8 new machines from a different brand.
Wow.
So,
and that's,
and when we go through a fight with maybe something happening, we think that like we're siloed and it's not happening anywhere else. That's just not the case.
Right. Yeah. And it does feel like at times we're on the front or the back end of certain things, right? So we'll have these conversations with other contractors or other owners, and they'll say like, we haven't seen that yet. And then 3-4 months later, they've seen it or vice versa. They tell us something's happening outside of our area. And 6 months later, we're like, oh, now we've experienced some of that now too. And so maybe not always at the same time, but similar things in different places.
well, and one of the benefits is when we get into these groups, you try to make it that it's not exactly the same. Not necessarily industry. I mean, you can change a lot of different things. But one of the things I find value in is if you can have a group that has companies of different ages, for the company itself, where they are in their growth pattern, in their development, because then you can have somebody that you're working with that has sort of seen everything once. And so they may not have seen this version of what's happening right now, but they saw it 25 years ago. And so it provides benefit to us that way, because you always think, you feel kind of siloed, alone, when you're trying to deal with anything that comes down the road. You just sort of focus in, and it's how we operate, that we focus in, we solve the problem. And sometimes we don't have a great look at the bigger picture. We're just trying to solve the problem and move on to the next thing. And so when you can talk to other people that are, really of no threat to you, not a threat to your business, not a threat to the competition or anything else, it gives you an opportunity to have a conversation honestly, openly, and you may get something back. And that's really where I find value is so much of what we do is based off of a combination of like a gut feeling, like an expectation of what we think we want to accomplish, and then some metric, some measurement that we're using. And so we look at those two things and we make a decision. But it's so helpful when you're able to talk to somebody else who has made similar decisions based on similar things in the past. And so you're like, okay, or they haven't, where they've said like, actually, we were in that scenario and we didn't do that. We did this, and this is why. And it gives you the ability to step back and see it without actually having to make the decision or make a mistake.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, I've done a little photography, right? And maybe a little off topic, but one of the things you learn if you're interested in learning about photography early on is that the way you walk up to something is very rarely the way you want to take a picture of it. So if you walk up to something and, you're, let's say maybe it's a landscape, maybe you found this, beautiful waterfall, and you just walk down the path, the same path everybody walks down, and you step up to the railing and you take a picture. It's almost never the right angle to take the picture from. And I think the same thing is what you're saying here, Dan, is, we've each approached whatever's in front of us based on the way we found it, or based on our own experiences, based on our own perceptions of what the thing is. And a lot of times we don't stop to take a walk around, right? Like, what are the other angles? What are the other things we should be considering? Are there different views? Are there different ideas? And that's one of the biggest values for me about these types of things. I do one in a Teams call remotely every month, and it's half the time I don't say anything. I sit there and I listen, and it's all construction companies, but a lot of GCs, some subcontractors, some people who do civil work, a lot of people who do a wide variety of other things. But at least in my world, from insurance, bonding, financials, human resources, things of that nature, it's always similar problems or similar successes, similar issues, things of that nature, but a lot of different perspectives on how to get to the solution. So that's interesting you say that, because I think that's something that is a tough lesson to learn at times.
Yeah, I think that the ability to listen and actively listen, or whatever the fancy term is for now, but basically just listen and soak in, is so interesting, because like in the group I was just with, the one guy's almost retiring. Another guy's been doing it, 3 generations at his family and stuff like that. And so what they've seen is so vastly different than what we've seen. And so listening to them just, talking about anything, it doesn't even, might not even be work, but just what they do for hobbies, or, or learning their personalities and about how they do things. Because this one group that I'm part of, we've been together for a while, and the care, they call it love, but everyone has for each other. Like, people are trying the other people to be better. So at the end of each meeting, we get together and try and provide feedback to the group that we're visiting. And, it's up to them to be willing to accept whatever feedback or whatever the, positive or negative that we saw, but it's all about trying to help them get better. And so when you have that goal of helping each other get better, it really seems to create an atmosphere where everyone is trying to give whatever they can to help the situation. And also just the vast, years. And I think, you were saying different sizes too, because it's neat to hear someone that maybe does a different type of work, but they might do a lot more of it. But then you hear the challenges that they have, and you know what? Most of the time, they're the same ones. Their successes are the same too, sometimes too. So it really doesn't matter. It just gives you, if you're in the middle of something, being able to step back and have perspective is really what gives the difference. And so whatever money is spent on doing these things usually pays dividends, just learning. It's as easy as just driving by a competitor's job site and seeing how their equipment's lined up, or hey, what do they have for equipment there, just because maybe they found a new piece of equipment that we could try out. So it doesn't have to be traveling. It can be close by. It can be, like we said, just two guys from our team chatting about how they do it. They've run into an issue in the field and one found a way to already do it. So it doesn't have to be like that, but just for management level, sometimes you go outside of your area because it helps provide some ability to do things without someone that you're competing against on a daily basis.
And you use the word perspective. That's where I was going to go here. Is it can give you so much perspective. And then you hit on another point that I was thinking about talking here is I feel this is somewhere we actually fail as a company, is with foreman meetings. Like, we have struggled to have foreman meetings, and we've set them up monthly, and then it's not convenient, so we cancel one. And then, now we've gone to an idea that we'll do it quarterly because the guys feel like they weren't getting as much value out of it as we hoped they would. But it's one of those things, and I think, the guys listening, if you want value out of a meeting like that, you need to bring something to the meeting. And I get it where you're saying a lot of times you listen, but I think if you talk to other people that were in your meeting, they would say, actually, Brian adds a lot. You know what I mean? Brian adds a lot, but you think you're listening, and you are, but you're also adding, but you almost discount what you bring to the table, because if you're in the right mindset, you're eager to get some information that someone else has that you don't have, right? Because regardless of our roles, whether you're, day one ditch digger or you're Ford, you know what I mean? If you're going to be better tomorrow than you were today, you're going to try and learn something that you didn't know today. And the best way to learn is from someone else, because to learn on your own is a very dangerous, expensive way to learn. We've done it, but we've been much more successful when we haven't done it that way, right? For me personally, a great example is Gary Rambo, right? We didn't have to learn the mistakes of the landfill world. I mean, we went into landfill, we did the first project, we realized that it was much bigger than we thought, but we understood it and we were okay. And we worked with an owner who, while I thought they were a little bit difficult, were supportive of us learning. From that point on, once we had Gary, we were never learning anymore. I mean, everyone that was working was learning, but the person that was managing it already knew it. So it didn't cost us, like in a sense of production or in a sense of money. It didn't cost us as much to learn that thing. And I think that's one place that we don't do a great job in, like the foreman level, is when I put all the foremen together, like they'll listen to us and they'll have a conversation and they'll say, my job is doing this. But I don't feel like, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the guys, hey, if you're listening and I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong the next time you see me. But I feel like we're not open enough with each other to be able to say like, hey, let's go help this person. I saw you doing something. Here's why I wouldn't have done it that way. Or, hey, I hear you have this project coming. I've done a project just like this. Here's what I ran into. Like Ben Swisher is a great example. Ben, if you run into a job that's tight in a difficult space, Ben be a good person to talk to, because Ben seems to end up on those jobs now and again. You know what I mean? Between Hill School and a couple other projects he did, Ben's been in tight spaces and done well. You know what I mean? If you want to talk utilities, we have a couple guys who have really a lot of experience in utilities. Same thing with landfill. Same thing with special projects with the houses. You know what I mean? There are people here within Berg that really know what they're doing very well. And so as we struggle with the labor market, and it's a conversation I just had the other day with Brad and Dylan about how do we build operators, right? If we're having trouble finding qualified operators, how do we build operators? And we've gone down this road a little bit before, trying to build a training program, but it's hard, because how are you going to stop to take the time to train as a devoted responsibility over a period of time, 6-8 weeks, when you need to continue to work? So we tend to learn on the go. But as I spiral around what I'm talking about, the point is there are people here that know what you need to know. And all you have to do is ask them and they'll tell you. They may not be the most, conversational people where they're going to come up and say, hey, I'd like to teach you something. But if you ask them, they will be very open and teach you. And we go to peer groups to get that. Because locally we're in a very competitive market. You know what I mean? There's a couple guys that I talk to in the industry who are really open with me and locally. And I appreciate that, because they don't perceive us as a threat, right? We're not a competitor to them. But it's not easy to just call up the 10 companies that work right around us. How about we all get together and talk about our business model and what's going well and what's not? They're not going to do it, because we're a risk to them. They're a risk to us. But when you talk about getting the work done, I think we do have that ability, and we could really help ourselves if we were just a little more open, and some of the guys have taken to it and they develop I don't want to say cliques, because that has like that connotation, like you're in high school, but there are certain guys who call certain other guys, and they have conversations both in work and out of work, and they rely on each other. But I think there's more that could be done there. And I think the foreman meetings are like a mini peer group if we would use it right, but we just got to be able to get to that point. And I don't know why we haven't. It's a failure of something that I'm not getting across to make that happen.
Yeah.
Well, the amount of time that we have to do it, the information that we're trying to communicate during that time, that's where afterwards, I mean, and most of the times it's, close to the end of the day and the guys want to get out of there to go home to be with their families. But, if they had a 5-minute conversation with somebody new each time they came or something like that. I mean, I think with joining peer groups or even within in the company, you have to be willing to learn. That is or be willing to be part of it. And that's part of the deal that really has to be, to make it valuable, you have to want to be there.
Well, part of it, I think part of learning at times, especially group learning, is being vulnerable, right? Admitting you don't know something, which is difficult, really difficult to stand amongst peers, people who you know, trust, want their respect, etc., and then acknowledge that you might need a solution. You might need help. Sometimes that's really, really hard.
It is,
So-
and another one comes to mind is Brian Ford and I. You know what I mean? We used to get out more, and there's a saying roughly that you don't need to advertise when you're busy. You need to advertise when you're slow, right? Which is counterproductive. So not that you shouldn't advertise when you're
I
busy,
think
but
it's the opposite.
no, it's when things are bad, that's when you need to spend money to be able to make things go. It's when things are good, you tend to just keep rolling. Now you should always be consistent, and then that would be good. But when things are going well, we just continue to expect them to go well. And when things are going poorly, you sort of struggle. But that's when you need to reach out and be vulnerable, to your point, and say like, "Hey, I could use a hand here. Like this is a project I haven't worked on before. This is a client I haven't dealt with. This is a material I haven't seen." It's and when you can do that, when you can be vulnerable, that really creates a stronger team. And it goes to a lot of our core values that will work together to solve a problem, to reach a solution. And I think a lot of times we do that really well. But it is one of the hardest things to do, especially in our industry. You know what I mean? In this world, it isn't natural for people to just admit they don't know what they're doing, or they haven't seen this before, or they need a hand.
Well, not only that, but our industry is probably one of the most tribal knowledge industries out there still at this point. I mean, people are trying to create videos and people are trying to create training mechanisms, but nothing beats hours in a seat. Like, there's just nobody's found the shortcut yet. Everybody's trying to find that shortcut, but then no one has been able to find that. And so that's just, the people you talk about with the wealth of knowledge, none of them started yesterday. They've all been doing this for a while. They've all seen things. That's how they got the knowledge, good or bad. And so that's the point of both the peer groups and the people internally talking with each other, because there is that ability to gain something. And it's the thing is that we've talked about this before, the industry has a lot of people that have a lot of experience. And at some point they're ready to move on to something else. So they're the people that, need to be able to have someone that they can talk to, because that knowledge, if they go away and don't pass that on, that knowledge just disappears. There's no way to recreate that. It's literally in between their ears in that 6 inches or whatever it is. And they have to be able to get it out to give it to the person that doesn't have it yet. That's the big piece.
Some of what we're talking about reminds me a little bit of predictive index. The idea that we've all got this set of traits, of personality characteristics, and that's how we like look at our stuff. Not necessarily always acknowledging how other people are looking at their stuff, right? And I'm a little bit of a nerd, but maybe we should get like hard hat stickers with these profiles on them, right? Like,
I mean, a lot of corporations.
I'm totally for it.
I know, but your narcissism comes out as soon as we start talking about predictive index.
We do. We all know that. We don't have to go.
I don't
back
even
down.
know what my name is, but you're very proud of yours.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, I'm a fighter jet, so I don't see how you can top
How could
that.
you not be excited?
Right? How could you not be excited?
No,
to be
you
a
go
mascot
to
as
a
fighter
lot
jet?
of corporate facilities and like people that are in cubicles, they will have some type of that on their outside their cubicle. It might be colors or disc profiles, but they literally will have that on the door or access to their office to help people with things like that.
I'm seeing it. We're not going to use pronouns, but we're going to be like Dan, Maverick, fighter jet.
Fighter jet. What's funny is the way I use that really is, we had a new guy come on. David joined the team.
Yeah. David and I had this conversation.
And so
we probably give the same spiel.
We probably give the same thing. And I said to him, I use you and I as the example. I said, because if you're going to interact with Brian and I, you'll be best suited if you interact very differently. Right. I was like, if you have a question for me or you need something from me, just come in and say, if my door's open, just come in, walk in and say, hey, I'd like to talk about this. I may not give you the best answer, but I'm going to give you the best answer I can at that moment. And I'm not going to be bothered at all. I said, I'll actually probably be frustrated if you come to me later and say, hey, I wanted to ask you this, but I didn't want to bother you. And so can we talk about this tomorrow? But it's something that's urgent that needs to be done. I said, whereas Brian really would rather that you say, hey, I'd like to talk about this. You might only need to give him 5 minutes, but just don't like bang on his door. Right. And so between you and I, it's a really interesting dynamic, I think, how it works, because many times I'll walk over and I'll say, hey, Brian, do you have a minute? And that's, for me, that's saying like, I didn't just start talking, right? I
Right.
said like, hey, do you have a minute, to give you an opportunity to say, well, can you give me 5 minutes, or what do you want to talk about? Some way that I would do it. I'm not to the point where I'm good enough most of the time where I like email you and say, hey, Brian, let's set up a time to talk about this, which would probably be better for you. And likewise, you've done the flip side where you tend to come over and you'll be like, hey, Dan, can we just talk about this, and just walk in and start talking about it, which isn't, you've probably thought through what you want to talk
Yes,
about.
I've prepped.
You've prepped for it.
He has notes somewhere.
I've rehearsed my speech, and
And it's not that strong, right? Like, in other words, we all want to make it this thing that like makes it grander than it is, but it's just a comfort level. And then how that plays out in how you act. You know, I'd read something, I think Brian and I talked about it, not Ford and I had read something that I think I actually went to high school with the kid, and he works in government now, that wrote this, but it was saying that it takes 23 minutes or something to get refocused when somebody knocks you off tasks for an average person.
yeah.
And so effectively in modern society, you may never actually be on task. That was like the point of this. He's in pretty high up in education in the government. And it really struck me as odd, because I pride myself that I can task switch, right? I can switch from one to another. But when I really look at it, when I'm working effectively, I'm best when people leave me alone. Like, if you can let me get focused, all of a sudden I'll become more productive, right? Like, I'll get more focused. So even when I say I enjoy doing it and it doesn't bother me, the truth is I'm less effective. So, you know, so it's like a really weird thing in how you want to use these predictive indexes. But predictive index is a really strong thing. I think that we use it a lot. And I'm a fan of it. You know what I mean? I think it's gives you a window into how somebody may operate that lets you be more conscious of them as a person, as an individual, instead of just with my personality, just running over somebody because we're going to talk the way I want to talk.
I don't know. We're gonna have to think about this. I think the hard hat stickers might be a thing.
That would be sweet. Ford, do you remember what you are? Because yours shifted a little bit, right? But
No, I don't even have an idea
Ford
anymore.
doesn't even remember.
Yeah.
I don't know. So my narcissism comes through. I'm the
Yeah.
only one that remembers what I am.
That's all right.
That's
all right.
Maybe I get a special narcissism sticker. Like a bonus.
Special colored hat,
So, yeah.
the lid, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was actually even like getting back to the original topic, there was literally a conversation amongst the peers group about hard hats, how expensive they're getting. Does your team transfer it over to the new hockey style hard hat? Like stuff like that. You know, what they're dealing with that, you know, and then stickers, and then, you know, what gets put on a hard hat, that kind of stuff. And it was interesting. And also it also looks at how each owner, how they like to control their company or allow for freedom for their people.
Yeah, you know what, the stickers thing, and this could be this. I'll just put it out there that we're not going to have like a podcast about this necessarily, unless somebody gets back to us and wants to talk about it. But some of the craziest stickers on just our guys' hard hats, right? We were out last week running around seeing all the guys, and for me, Robbie always comes to mind.
Sure.
And I'm not going to get into Robbie, but Robbie's hard hat is just a complete conflict. Like, there's so many things that don't match on his hard hat. You know what I mean? Like, he's got far left views, far right views. He uses it as a statement, which is really funny to me. You know what I mean? Like, it's just him like he's making a joke. Like,
right.
he's lightening up the mood of what he does every day with his hard hat. And some guys do that. And then I feel like Stetson's hard hat legitimately they're probably equally spaced. You know what I mean? Like, and they're actual things that are of relevance for every safety training, everything he's qualified for. You know, it's like, it says a little bit about people's personalities. It's you know, it's one of the struggles we've had is we went to a uniform setup with our hard hats, with the colors having some relevance and us providing the hard hats, was some of the guys like to like express themselves with their hard hats. You know what I mean? Which, if you just said like construction guys, they're going to wear a hard hat. Like, yeah, they're going to wear a hard hat, but that's not actually true. They actually, a lot of them take, you know, it means something to them. They'd want to wear certain ones,
right.
and they, you know, adorn them with stickers. You know what I mean?
It is funny.
Yeah. Sometimes, yeah. You don't want to have to explain them to people either.
No, yeah. I've asked Robbie to explain his hard hat to me numerous times.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We've been all over the place.
But that sounds like a good place to wrap it up.
That just sounds like a normal podcast for us, doesn't it?
Thanks for joining us, folks. We hope you got something from this, and we hope you join us again.